Welcome back to the fourth installment of the community Q&A. This is the Let's Ask Max segment, and today we will be answering your questions with our answers. So, Max, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay. Let's start with, I guess I kind of breezed through that like I actually cared, which I don't. So, Stephen.d.Armstrong asks, do you have a favorite weightlifter and why? Let's say elite weightlifters. I know your answer would be me otherwise. I know, I'm hilarious. Thanks.
Okay, Stephen. Favorite weightlifter? Probably when I was coming up in weightlifting, it was like Naeem or Piros. I'd say current day, like outside of the people I've coached. That's a tough one. Probably Lasha. I mean, it's just sort of obvious, I guess.
Yeah. For me, I would say just because he's so, I want to say hot, but it's not like an attractive thing. It's just like he's on fire.
It's popular.
He's Nino Pizzolatto. I think he moves so well. He's so strong, and technically he looks really good. I like Carlos Nassar too. I don't know why it's those 281s, but they just have really like kind of reinvigorated that class and you know, taken some of the shine away from Liu and Lee. And the Chinese athletes who have been ruling it for a while now. So it's cool to see some new life in that division.
Cool.
Yeah. Hugo says, do I need to add in some hypertrophy exercises to make Weightlifting.AI more suitable for my hypertrophy goals, or will the program as is suffice?
Without knowing your hypertrophy goals, it's impossible to answer that question. Assuming that your goals are what most are, which is to look really big and be jacked, you can certainly add sets to the hypertrophy and bodybuilding kind of movements that are in the program already. If that's not enough, then by all means, you're welcome to add more work in. Just understand it will probably have some effect on your actual classic lifts and regular stuff afterward.
Yeah, and Max, I know you made it comprehensive, so if people were to add in hypertrophy work, it would be general in that like it's already well targeted to specific muscle groups. So it would be doing more volume or just be mixing things up. So it's really hard to say if it's more or less suitable, like if the changes would be more or less suitable, because you'd have to get into the weeds, you have to be able to measure how much muscle you're gaining and say, is that in alignment with what I want, or is it like not in alignment? And then you can make adjustments from there. I don't think anyone gets that like granular with their training or their results. So I would just kind of, me personally, I would stick to it, and I would just trust that if you're doing training, getting stronger, and you move well, you're gonna look as you're gonna look, which is like kind of genetically determined too, based on muscle insertions and the length of the muscles and responsiveness to training. So yeah, it's hard to say if you need more training. I would do what you have and just make progress, and then you'll probably be pretty good. So iCantfindmykeys says, do you guys have the ability to manually step into the app and prescribe, say, 10 by 10 squats for someone you don't like? Thanks.
I mean, you don't even need me to do it. You could do it. You could change the number of reps per set on your squat workouts, and you could keep adding sets and changing the reps till you get 10 sets of 10 if you wanted. I would not advise that.
Yeah, I would not advise that unless you are on special supplements, which hopefully you aren't. Okay, the next question from Nathan is maybe a question for Seb, who's not here. Would Weightlifting.AI ever expand into powerlifting? I assume the back end parts of the app could be modified relatively easily.
It's actually a question for me. We have no idea whether we'll do powerlifting or not. It's so far down the road, and Weightlifting.AI still needs a lot of development, a lot of work. So possibly at some point.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Probably better than any answer Seb could have given. Jason.g.wolfe says, what are your, Josh and Max, not Seb, best lifts in training and competition? He's able to find Max on open powerlifting, but no such luck for weightlifting totals, and I believe that Max had a wrist injury that stopped his weightlifting career, but curious for more info on that. Side note, if not done on another podcast, it would be perfect for the Philosophical Weightlifting podcast on Spreaker and other podcasting platforms. to interview Max about the injury, how it affected him mentally, along with his career trajectory. As always, keep up the amazing work.
Yeah, that would be a good podcast. We could do that at some point.
Yeah.
The host of Philosophical Weight podcast, maybe we could. Yeah, my best lifts as a weightlifter were like 140, 170, weighing like probably 86 kilos, 87, somewhere around there. And then I got injured right after that, so didn't do much more.
Yeah, my best lifts are 125, 151 at like 89, 85. And hopefully those are going to go up soon. Maybe we can get 35, 65 and get that elusive 300 total, which would be great. And I think under Max's guidance, that should be doable.
Well,
I was going to say,
a master painter can only do so much with the canvas he's provided.
Yeah, I was gonna try and plug your one-on-one remote coaching, and I thought this is for people specifically on the Weightlifting.AI, which makes no sense. So MikeEST, I wonder if he's in the Eastern Standard Time Zone, says, "What's the best way to establish volume landmarks for athletes?"
Look at their individual differences. So look at their age, height, weight, sex, training experience, strength levels. And you'll get an idea. And then obviously monitor the way they respond to training, whether they get overly tired with the volume you've given them, whether they don't make progress with the volume you've given them, and then make adjustments to that.
Yeah, that's perfect. And hopefully at some point we'll have that MEV, MRV flow chart that people can check out that will help with that process. Sammy.Christo says, "What is the best way to navigate the app if you miss 5 days due to COVID? Lots of folks in Minnesota seem to be catching it recently. Thanks, fellas."
That's a little bit tough. What I would suggest is that you start off on the day that is current. So you miss a week, start off on the current day, and put in your readiness as low, low fatigue, low motivation, low sleep. Just reduce your readiness, and the app will adjust to you as you go.
Oh, that's smart. Cool. Cooperokiehomie says, "Would Max consider doing some traveling seminars, clinics, and if so, would the Midwest be a consideration? I know a few weightlifting gyms in St. Louis that could be potential venues." So I already reached out to Cooper, signs his name is Coop, and I expressed some interest in that. So he said I'll see in a few weeks, but what are your thoughts on people who would be interested in having you doing seminars?
Yeah, I'd be willing to do seminars. We're with Josh, myself, and Joanne are considering trying to figure out a bunch of seminars for next year, all over the world, possibly the U.S., possibly everywhere. So I guess anyone who's interested, shoot a message to us, and we'll see what we can work out.
Yeah, and you can even just message me on the Weightlifting.AI, and then I can get back to you and we can start the conversation. AS Lewis 54 says, "Once a program is completed, does the AI remember the work, reps, exercises, weights, etc. from the program you just completed? Or should we take a week or two to test things such as a hang snatch PR or back squat 1RM? Speaking of back squat 1RMs, how important is this number to the AI and weightlifting in general? It seems very few weightlifters actually go above a 3RM, and it's more about speed than ultimate strength."
So the first answer to your question is yes, it remembers things. It does influence program generation. The second question about squats was that the ratio of back squat to clean and jerk is significant because it gives us a good indicator of a few things, whether or not you're a strong squatter, a weak squatter, how efficient you are at the clean, how good your skill is there. And that dictates several other ratios or several other, we can infer several other things from that ratio. So yeah, it's pretty important. As far as weightlifters, I feel like lots of weightlifters know their 1 rep max back squat.
Yeah.
That's pretty common. More so even than like in powerlifting, I would say most weightlifters are pretty aware of what they can do for a single because they do a lot more single repetitions. But yeah, it's important.
Yeah, and I think people who say 1RMs aren't important, they're generally it's kind of an interesting argument because they say it's not worth the increased injury risk, but I've never really seen anyone get hurt with a 1RM squat.
Yeah, I mean,
have you seen that
in powerlifting? Sure, but it's that's a different game.
Yeah.
As far as like people getting really badly injured on a 1 rep max back squat in training, like for weightlifting and high bar, like I don't think I've really seen it.
Yeah. And I would say, if you're interested in having, the most accurate 1RM, you have to think about what goes into executing any technique, and that's the coordination of the movement. And how do you improve coordination is through practice. So if you think of like, okay, I want to get my 1RM in alignment with my abilities, I would have to practice that, which means I would have to do it repeatedly over a span of a few weeks or months. So I would say, if you find the back squat important and you want to know where you're at, you would practice it, and then you would test, and then that would inform the rest of your training, which is how weightlifting training is created, through the information gathered by 1-arm snatch, 1-arm clean and jerk, 1-arm hang snatch, block snatch. So if you find it important, it would make sense to test. So I'm a fan of it. Okay, and then we have the next question. khaimapostol says, would you, Max and Seb, ever consider going abroad to conduct seminars, clinics? This was the guy who messaged about the Philippines. Specifically the Philippines, the interest in the sport has been growing ever since Heidelin?
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know how you say it.
Heidelin Diaz won the gold medal at last year's Tokyo Olympics. Okay, so we answered that.
Answers yes,
previous. Yeah. Posiedonv says, advice for dropping weight, categorized as a master's lifter about 3 months out.
As far as dropping weight, as far as like losing body mass, I would say, find a diet program that works for you. There's countless of them, far more varied, or, there's plenty on there, more so that we can always discuss today here. And then if you're talking about cutting weight for the meet, as in doing a water cut and actually losing a bunch of water, dehydrating yourself before the meet, again, probably a topic too in depth to discuss right here, but manage your body weight and get your body fat levels as low as possible going into the meet. And then if you're going to cut weight, then find the approach as far as how to load water, how to cut, how to dehydrate, how to rehydrate, and then perform well.
Yeah.
So a lot of resources out there. I would look into those.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Weightlifting House did a podcast with Danny Lennon, who owns Sigma Nutrition. He actually has a book on weight cutting for combat sports. And it's like the same protocol for weight cutting in those sports, pretty similar for weightlifting. So I would check the podcast out. Maybe I can include it if I remember. And then I would, as Max said, you would actually want to lose the weight a little more slowly and then get yourself within striking distance, so you don't have to make too many dramatic changes, just so performance can kind of stabilize closer to the competition, especially for people who aren't hyper competitive.
Wow, that was a dig on you directly.
Well, he did say he was a master's athlete.
Wow, dig on all people older than Josh.
Kody says, shout out to Kody of Weightlifting House. Crispy Kody. Is she referring to her joints? Crispy Kody?
Wow. Josh is taking shots at everyone today.
Someone has to pick up the slack, Max.
I try to be a nice, peaceful person.
Yeah, it's the only time. Kody says, stretching, is it going to change my life, or can I get away with mostly ignoring
it? The secret answer is you can probably get away with ignoring it. We had a discussion about this the other day. You're probably not going to stretch and increase the physical length of your muscles with the amount of stretching that most people are doing. So in that regard, probably not going to do a huge amount. If you need increased range of motion in specific positions, you're more likely going to be benefiting yourself by doing, spending more time in those positions, finding ways to augment the training of those positions, doing some foam rolling or some, PNF type stretching or something like that, then moving into the position and training the tissue to respond in that position. So long answer, I mean, maybe could benefit a little, but the short answer is probably you're fine.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking to find more range at a general position or movement, I would pick exercises that allow you to explore that with more and more weight. So I know the app prescribes front foot elevated split squats.
Yeah.
You put your front foot on something and then you really just jam your knee forward as much as you can while holding good position.
Jam's a little aggressive, but
you explore the end range of motion in that position, and then you load it, and then you just make sure you can control that position. So, having your knee forward and then letting your knee kick back almost immediately and losing the ability to produce force in the quadriceps, I don't think is very helpful.
Yeah.
But if you can hold the position and like train the muscle to produce force there, the muscles, I think it would be very useful. Static stretching without any other assistance, I don't think is going to help much. Unless it's, again, paired, like Max said, with something to help with force production in that range of motion.
It feels good sometimes.
It does feel very good. It feels very nice.
After training, you stretch out and relax. But yeah.
It's mostly just laying around on the ground.
That's my form of stretching.
Yeah.
Laying on my back.
I'd rather do that on a couch.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was all the questions. If you guys enjoyed it, let us know. Again, I think most people like the format. They like the longer form Q&A. The timestamps will be down below, so hopefully that helps break it up enough. Max, any last words?
That's it.
All right, we'll catch you guys on part 5 of the community Q&A.